Well, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me. How's everything going with you down? You're in Mexico City?
I'm in Mexico City right now. Yeah, I'm prepping my next show, so I'll be here for I know the next 7 months.
Very cool, very cool. Um, well, yeah, I guess before we get into just the more specifics of House of the Dragon, and if we can get to Fallout, I'd love to ask you a couple of questions about Fallout. But yeah, just
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I guess quickly, how did you just get started as a cinematographer in film, or I guess more specifically television?
Yeah, I mean, I I was born into a family in film. Like my grandfather was a DP, a couple of uncles that were DPs. My dad was a producer director. So yeah, I guess I am a third generation cinematographer. My grandfather shot something like 200 feature films during the 30s, 40s, and 50s. He was literally a first generation cinematographer in this country.
Very cool.
And it was like what we call the golden age of cinema in Mexico. So I was born into that. So I, my childhood was the film set, and then I started like really liking it and really feeling attracted about the whole thing. I knew I also liked photography in general, like taking stills, and I had a camera when I was very young, and I started taking pictures. So it was like it's not like I didn't have a choice, but almost it almost feels that way. Um, but I mean, on the other side, I was very supported. I always had, the summer job, which when I was in school
Mhm.
wasn't anywhere else but on set, right? So yeah, I think I was literally born into it. But and then I did start on the commercial world, not on the feature or television world, and that for many many years I shot commercials, and there was a big thing about commercials in not only in Mexico, in the whole world during the '90s, late '90s for me, and then I jumped
Cool.
into features, and that's how the whole thing kickstarted. Television came later. I'll tell you a story, but yeah, that's how everything started.
Very cool. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's in the genes and it's in the blood. So that's very cool that you were able to follow in your family's footsteps.
It almost feels like a craft, right? Like you're like a shoemaker. Your dad's a shoemaker. Your grandfather was a
Right.
shoemaker, and then you spend your days at the workshop, and that's how it was for me. I mean, of course, I love it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't. And it was also family dynamic. My brother used to direct, um, and I married a DP, so it's kind of part like family dinners. Let's just say we're not talking about politics.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better to talk about film. I think politics takes up too much of the conversation anyway. But yeah, you worked a lot with Clare Kilner on Fallout and House of the Dragon. You worked, I believe you were the cinematographer for all the episodes that she directed. Um, so yeah, I guess how did you two wind up meeting and working together so extensively?
Yeah, my work with Claire, and like I would like to say my road in life with Claire has it's very it's very particular because it's been like we've been chasing our tails for a long time. And I first met her when I shot The Alienist, and I think that was like 2019. But before that, it happened to be like I shot a pilot of a TV show called Good Behavior. And without ever meeting her, she came in and shot some episodes of the show after I have left. And then we had a lot of common, a lot of common friends in the industry. We didn't know each other. And then I was shooting The Alienist. The director that I went with, that the director was going to shoot my episodes and I had prepped all the episodes with, had to leave. And then Claire came in. So we literally met each other on set. Like, hello, I'm Claire, and your director, I'm going to be the shoot the blog that you're already shooting. So for her, it was like a little bit going against the current, but we really kind of like clicked and we became really good friends. So the result of that um alienist story was really good. And then we just, we have a thing. We're friends. After that, we shot Mosquito Coast together, but that was again another show that was we were not meant to shoot together. Like she was invited and I was already there. And then, you know, it was like, oh, Clare Kilner's gonna shoot this. And I was like, oh, but she's my friend. Um, and then you know the bigger collaboration started. So she called me and it's like, you know, I'm being called for House of the Dragon. Do you want to shoot it? And we're like, of course. This is like my favorite show ever. Like because
Right.
I was a huge fan of Thrones, and now a
Okay.
big fan of Dragons. So of course I said yes.
Right.
And you know, we just became tighter, and we just, you know, we really like how we collaborate, what we kind of give to each other. Fallout came after that, then of second season of Dragons, and she's actually coming to the show that I'm actually shooting again without us knowing that we were going to work together. Somebody
Yeah.
told me like, yeah, you know, Clark is going to shoot block 3. You know, like, oh my God, I can't believe. So it's been like a winding road that keeps crossing, uh, which I'm very happy because she's amazing. She's super sensible to a lot of things, like her vision of things or the way she works with actors and she approaches, you know, the themes and the stories. You know, is something that I feel really close to. So I think working together has just become a natural thing.
Yeah. It sort of just feels like kismet. Like it's just kind of meant to be. It was written.
Yeah, we're like high school buddies now. Like we just like, you know, it's like our relationship goes really beyond our, you know, industry. We are really good friends. So that's imagine working with a really good friend. That's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it must make the chemistry when filming just, you know, so much, I guess, easier and smoother because you know, you can freely collaborate.
Yeah. Well, director DP it's a relationship, right? So it has to you have to take care of it like any other relationship, whether it's, you know, if it's a partner or it's a friend or so I think that's what we do for each other. I think we take care of each other and we know what our place is in terms of, you know, how we're gonna do, you know, this show or this film and then we collaborate. I think for me is the best example of how a DP and a director should collaborate, but that's only like my vision of it. It
Hmm.
you know, it's she gives me that space and that place, and I try to keep hers and just try to be, you know, what a tool for her, you know, a cinematographer should be.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense in terms of how the relationships will work because, I mean, you're both telling the story through the lens and, you know, that collaboration needs to happen in order to tell that story. So makes sense to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. It's you know, we are something that, you know, directors use to tell the story. We are a tool, and we are, you know, our vision is important, but it's not our vision that is going to tell the story. So we as cinematographers always have to keep that in mind and respect.
Sure.
And if the director is open to bring the vision of a DP, of course they can do that and as much as they like, and we can be very helpful, you know,
Hmm.
on helping telling the story. And I think that's. I mean, I have that with a few directors, but with Claire has been a very specific and very fruitful relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely made for some great television, that's for sure. And you know, you mentioned you were a fan of Game of Thrones, as I, you know, as was I, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I guess I think you've actually been the cinematographer on the most episodes out of all the cinematographers
Mhm.
so far. So that must be pretty cool. And I guess just what was it like? You know, I guess like yeah, it's so exciting, but also like okay, there's a lot to live up to because this is the follow up to Game of Thrones, and not only that, but it's a
Mhm.
prequel to Game of Thrones. So you're telling the
Mhm.
story before the story, and there were stories about this story in Game of Thrones. So you know, I guess what was that process
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
preparing for something of this magnitude?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is it makes me very happy to know that I've shot the most episodes on the show that people are liking it, and
Yeah.
it has its own audience now, and it's not only Thrones. I was a big fan of Thrones. I was one of those guys who waited every week, and you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
God, what happened to you know
Jon
this or that
Snow.
character,
Yeah.
Yeah, Jon Snow, and I really felt for Cersei that episode, like,
Yeah,
the shame, the walk of shame thing.
right.
So I was one of those, absolutely. So when I was offered this, it was I was very happy, but I was also very, anxious about how are we gonna make this happen? How are we gonna get up there and have the
Hmm.
same fan base and make something that they like after, especially all the controversy in season 8. So it's like, how are we gonna
Right.
come up with that? But at the end, you do it, you go and do it, and you get involved, and you like the story, and you take care of it, and you do what I think is right. And Dragons is a show that where we're allowed to do a lot. We have a lot of freedom, so you kind of take that and you kind of take that responsibility, and then you just work, right? You do the best thing you
Mhm.
can, and you try to put your vision. And um I'm at this point, I'm very happy because it does really feel like my show, not only my show, but I do feel like I have brought to the show something.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky. I mean, really lucky to do that. And that's, I guess, that's one of the things you start going to film school in the first place, right? To be able to bring a vision to things and do things that you like and that people like. And that's the exact feeling that I have for Dragons, which I also have for Fallout, by the way. It's like I'm such a big fan of Fallout.
Yes. I mean, Fallout was. I mean, I don't normally binge shows like back to back to back. I like to space it out, but that one I started watching and I just watched it the whole way through, and
Yeah,
that
all night
scene.
long.
I seriously, I was like, I can't stop. And that scene with the nuke crate. I guess ask you more specifically later, but that scene with the crate when they walk out of this dark tunnel and there's this giant nuke, and like the nuked L.A. skyscraper in the background. It's such like a mind. I don't keep it clean. It was a mind F. The seeing that
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, for like, I mean, I wish, because I'm like a weekly guy on TV, and I wish Fallout would have been released that way, but I don't think it made a difference. Because I would have loved to like enjoy every episode. I think that every
Right.
episode has such a big thing to show
Yeah.
you, right? I Fallout would I never played a video game. I've never been a gamer, but when I was school for it, I started to search for what was Fallout, where did it come from,
Right.
and when you realize the magnitude of what you have in front of you and the responsibility you have to so many people, you wanna act for that. And the aesthetic that Fallout brings from the game to the series and all that, 1950s, Cold War kind of, aesthetic. It's
Yeah.
really interesting in the game, and that was the big challenge to bring it to the screen and be truthful to it. People were expecting so much about that show in
Yeah.
terms of, don't even say story, about props or about, colors, lighting.
Yes.
They were expecting the real deal, and I think
Yeah.
they got it. And
Yeah, a story like that with so much lore, and I mean, it's good and bad, right? I mean, especially also you have Jonathan Nolan who created the show, and he has his own, obviously, if it's not legendary yet career, then it's certainly shaping up to be one. I think with Oppenheimer certainly cemented it, working with his brother on that one. But yeah, so he has his own expectations, his own fan base, and then Fallout has this huge fan base going back decades. So there's so much involved with that you have to get right, and that's what initially drew me. I'm like, wow, this really looks like the video game. This looks like the vault. I feel like I'm there, and
yeah.
that was so cool.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the myth of Jonathan and his brother about trying to make everything on camera, try to make everything like look real, and we'll shoot film and then we'll do effects on camera. It works. Like
Hmm.
it really brings you closer to things. And of course there's a lot of VFX in that show, but you would be surprised of how much there isn't. And
Yeah,
it was really fun to shoot and to handle all those props and to be inside of a vault and be able to open those doors and
yeah,
you know um but even like the gadgets, like the weapons, the guns,
Right.
it was like the cockroaches. Even the cockroaches were for real, and it's like there was in this animatronics
Really?
suits.
Okay.
So
I was gonna ask you about that.
yeah, so yeah, so I think yeah, I think that's part of the movie magic, and somebody like Jonathan has like that in his head, and his I think that's why his TV shows are so great.
Yeah, yeah, specifically the T-60 armor. It reminded me initially of how they filmed Robert Downey Jr. in the Iron Man
Mm.
mask. I was curious how you did it because you not only have the inward facing camera, but also the outward facing camera when the rad roaches, start to
Hmm.
climb on top of the armor, and she shows up to save them. So I was curious how you did that.
Yeah, there were a lot of conversations about that armor, and then about the head of the armor.
Yes.
So that's I'm sure we shot it exactly the way that you think we did. We shot him, on this like. Of course, we took the helmet out, and then we shot him, in a very tight space. We added a lot of light effects, and then of course all those um, screen information that comes in VFX. But we were there physically, and then his POV towards outside, we literally had like the shape of like a vignette of goggles, and we put the camera there. We looked out, and then we got like goo on us and everything. So yeah, that was completely in camera. It's really fun to shoot that stuff.
Yeah, it was very cool, and I love the lighting. Were you on site in the tunnel, or was that a studio? It's hard to tell sometimes with the advances.
No, we were inside the tunnel.
Yeah.
That's location. That scene which we shot during the day and then during the night. That's like a yeah. That's a tunnel in I think it was New Jersey, and that was all practical. I think there's a very few things added up to that scene. Even the outside, all that like
Yes.
overbridge, and I think that was all there.
Okay.
And it wasn't the most comfortable location to shoot in, but it was really screaming post-apocalyptic to us. So we decided to go there, and it was really fun.
Yeah, it was very cool because yeah, like you said, sometimes in the distance, you really never know these days if like that's there's so many different ways to shoot the environment, but I do particularly like when things are, on location and you kind of have to work
Yeah,
with the elements, right? You have to like figure out how to light this tunnel. Yeah, there was this moment where I think they shake hands and there's like a little orb like around their hands as they shake hands. I thought that was just like these little touches with the light. I thought was very cool.
yeah, yeah. There was a flare that was there. That was all in camera. If anything, they added a little bit of color to the flare to just make it a little bit more radioactive, I guess. But the light's there. Like there's very few things that were not there on the day. There's another scene where there's like the standoff at the bridge.
Yes, I was going to ask you about
And
that.
that was also a scene that was like 90% it's all there. Um,
Very
maybe
cool.
they probably worked a little bit on the far background, so buildings didn't look new or not destroyed, but all the action was there. Stunts, prosthetics as effect, makeup, so everything. So that's you really feel like you're shooting a movie in the 70s.
Yeah, it definitely had a really cool effect to it, and there's also like the juggling of going kind of back and forth, past and present. Um, you know, uh, is that at all does that add to the complications or add to the fun factor? Like some of it was filmed in, I guess, modern times, and then or their alternate modern time, and then some of it was filmed, it's supposed to be 200 years down the road.
Yeah. I mean, it's all shot in the same moment, right? Like not it. You do have to be very clear about how you distribute your time periods, I guess, and
Yeah.
what is aesthetic for each of them, and that's basically that's the essence of it. But you go on and you start, you shoot um and then I guess you probably want to give it like a distinctive visual approach to
Hmm.
all this eras, but yeah, but you end up shooting it. Of course, you don't shoot in order. So they did shoot the first three episodes
Hmm.
before I came in, but then we shot 4 to 8. And there were we're scrambling around. I have scenes that I shot are in episode 4, in episode
Right.
6, and it's episode 7. So I have scenes that were included on 4 episodes.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
and it's, I guess, also the way Jonah likes to work, which is let's just shoot, and then on the edit, if I need to mix, episodes, I mean, scenes from episodes, and then he'll do it. And that's what happened with Fallout. There was just a lot of footage that was all over the place, and I guess at the end they just tweaked the story.
Cool. Yeah. That's very interesting that some scenes wind up in different episodes. That's very cool. I
I
didn't realize
know.
that could happen. Very cool.
Yeah, there were some scenes that I shot for episode 6. I was supposed to shoot. When I went there, I
Hmm.
was my I was called to shoot 4 and 6 and 7, and I ended up shooting 5,
Yeah.
7, and then having scenes on and 4 and 6. So yeah, but yeah, it's what happens, and it's fine. You're just contributing to the whole show, right?
Yeah, it's kind of even better in a way. It's nice that a creator has it sort of, I guess, gives you the freedom to sort of just create, and then we'll figure it out, and it goes where it goes.
Yeah, a little bit like I don't think they were planning to do that, but at the end they did.
Cool. Yeah, but yeah, there are many locations in Fallout, and as there are many locations, maybe even more. I'm not sure which one had more, the Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, or Fallout. As you have like Harrenhal, Dragonstone, King's Landing, then you have Driftmark, you have uh, obviously the dragons you got to worry about,
Yeah, the
werewitches.
twins, yes.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, for House of the Dragon, I mean, first season approach was to shoot everything that kind of meant King's Landing. We shot that in either Spain or Portugal. Well, Portugal was a little bit more. I think was Pentos, but so basically
Yeah,
shooting
Pentos.
Spain, um, and then the northern part of the realm that we
Hmm.
shot in the UK, around the UK.
Okay.
For this second season, it was determined that we would shoot a lot more backlot. So there was a lot more build, a lot of what you see on King's Landing, like Small
Hmm.
Folk Rebellion and everything, that
Yeah.
shot actually on the backlot. And
Okay.
then we did travel to Spain. We did travel to Spain to shoot more of it. And we also spent a lot of time in Wales
Okay.
because there was this, decision about let's concentrate a little bit more our locations. And so we went to Wales to shoot everything that's a little bit northern than King's Landing. And such a beautiful place to shoot. Wales is amazing. I think 90% of Wales is like a national protected reservoir. So it's just amazing to shoot in. So yeah, that was the change from season 1 to 2, that we started shooting more in Wales.
Yeah, it was very cool. Yeah, and the behind the scenes footage, the scene where Damon is on top of Caraxes, amongst these
Mm.
mountains, threatening the Brackens with I saw that was filmed on location with a giant
Yeah, that was
like
on location.
with
Yeah,
dragon.
we were there we were there shooting, and at some point I talked to my DIT, and I was like, this location is so nice. It actually looks like a green screen. Like people are gonna think we shot this on the studio
Yeah,
and then composed the background. But no, that was all location. That, I mean, of course, not the dragon, but everything else
right.
was completely was completely in camera. Like even the weather, we had that weather on those couple of days. So yeah, it's beautiful to be able to go to a place um that looks without like that scopy, and that it really looks what you're looking for, and it's just beautiful and amazing wherever you point the camera to. And then of course if you have the House of the Dragon industry behind you,
Right.
then it'll only just look better.
Yeah,
And then you
that's
put a dragon in it, right?
right. Yeah, how do you? I guess you have to like factor in your mind, like, okay, there's like 100-foot dragon here. How do we make sure that fits in the shot?
Well, that's a big deal. That's a big thing. Of course we think
Yeah,
about it, and
yeah,
we prep for it, and there's a lot of departments attached to that idea. So you read the scene, especially with shots with dragons or scenes with dragons. We read the scene, we decide how we want to shoot it. First step is to storyboard it. And then once we like the storyboard, then you go to the second phase, which is finding the location, of course.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you go to like what we call previs, which is you actually go and make an animated version of it. And there's all kinds of things involved, for like you just said, does the dragon fit? It needs
Yeah.
to fit. That like people need to be standing where there's no dragon and they
Right.
can be hit by a dragon. So there's a lot of prep in that. What involves the dragon, the spatial, footprint of the
Yes.
dragon. How will the dragon react? In that scene specifically, we had Caraxes who has a really long neck,
Yes.
and it was a big deal. Like, okay, this is where Damon's going to be sitting, but where's going to be Caraxes' head?
Right.
Like 12 feet over there because it has this huge neck. So
Right.
those are the things you do consider, and you measure them, and you prep them, and you pre-visualize them in order to just not look like a fake dragon. There's a lot of work behind that. I mean, SFX, VFX,
Mhm.
everybody kind of works on that.
Yeah, the other big scene. Well, there are many scenes with dragons, but the one that stood out in season one was Rhaenys and Meleys when the dragon pops up from the floorboards during the coronation, and that's a massive scene because you have, I think it was like hundreds or if not thousands of people in this area. It's in a cave or some kind of, it's indoors at least, and this dragon just literally pops up, and it's a major scene in the series as well. It's
Yeah.
a big turning point.
That's a big concept scene because if you break it down, we had to shoot that scene. We had like at the end overall we had like eight days to shoot that scene, but that's
Okay.
a blue screen set. Like I wish we had thousands of people. We had hundreds. Um, and the studio that we were in was a quarter of the size of what the Dragon Pit's supposed to be. So
Mm,
those kind of scenes you approach by the very conceptual part of it, like what is the Dragon Pit? How does it look? How big should it be? What's in it? And there was the first time the Dragon Pit was going to be seen as a whole. There was some Dragon Pit on Thrones, and I think it's in season 8. But it was just like a demolish, almost Roman Colosseum kind of thing. But this was
hmm
the real thing. So we had to come up with a concept. And then in terms of what's going to happen there, it's going to be like a dragon trap where Renee is going to explode out.
Right.
How so all that geography, all that blocking needs to be done before even you start shooting or you start actually, you know, uh, doing the actual scene. So that was a blue screen set. So what we had is like a quarter of the dragon pit. So we had the dais on one side and then the door on the other side, which by the way, you can frame at the same time because they were supposed to be, you know, at twice the distance apart. So we had a piece of the door where all the people come in and then the people are crushed at the end, and then we have the dais, which is where the coronation takes place. Everything in the middle of it was just we had to imagine it, we had to reproduce it. We clone people. So then you start shooting all the elements. Then you shoot Rainy on top of a robotic thing we call the buck.
Right.
So you do start shooting all the little pieces, and that's how you put it together.
That's very cool. It just kind of blows my mind how, you factor in these dragons. And others, I believe it was actually a little bit of foreshadowing. In one of the episodes, you have Adam of Hull on the beach, crabbing, and he sees the shadow of the dragon in the water.
Mm.
At first, I thought it was Caraxes because there's either the scene before Damon leaves on Caraxes after arguing with Rhaenyra, and then a dragon. You see the shadow and the dragon fly. But now that I think about it, I think that was actually sea smoke that was flying over his
Hmm.
head. So that was a bit of foreshadowing, which I picked up on, after paying a little more
Yeah.
attention.
I mean, yeah, the producers decided. I mean, that was scene we shot a little bit longer, not only to establish his character a little bit better. Like he had this whole thing with a crab, and then he would let it go, and then you
Yeah.
establish him as a really nice guy, and then
Mhm.
you would establish the big thing, which was there was this dragon there that's looking for a writer, and
Right.
maybe he found something.
Hmm.
And the original scene was like it was a bit more clear about there's a dragon circling him and what's the deal with that. But
Uh-huh.
I think once they edited the whole season, they realized that maybe it was too soon to establish something
Hmm.
like that. Um, but yeah, the scene is about a dragon at this point, sea smoke. Fishing is like, eyeing somebody like, oh,
Yeah.
I kind of like, like I kind of like that guy. Like,
Right.
um, and then it pays off in episode 6,
Yeah.
where he's actually contacted by sea smoke. So
Yes.
really nice. I mean, the whole concept of the Dragon Rider stuff is really cool. But that's how it all starts, I guess, during the season.
Yeah, it's very cool. Like I didn't realize the connection at first, which I guess is what they were going for. They wanted to make it a surprise for the
Mm.
last episode. But another fan favorite though, and there are a bunch of other scenes I want to, if we have time to ask you about. But another fan favorite is the dog. Um, Cheese's dog. He's become a very big fan favorite. Have you ever worked with a dog? I mean, he just seems so friendly on camera. Have you ever worked with a dog like that before? And
Yeah,
uh,
I know that was very cute. It was I think it's a little bit of everybody contributing to that character, because the beginning the dog was just supposed to be there, and then Alan decided in episode 1, what happens if he kicks it, and that would just make the character nastier, right? Like, who kicks a
yeah,
dog out of nowhere?
yeah,
Um, but then the dog was still there, and then
yeah,
we were the ones that shot the hanging and the cutting of the rat catchers. And I think it was Claire who, I think, on the hanging said, "Oh, do we have the dog? Like, what happened to his dog?" I was like, "Oh, well, we can bring it." And like, okay, let's bring it. And it like it's like a special shot of the dog looking up,
yes,
and it was so cute. And then, like, weeks or months later, we were gonna shoot the cutting of the rat catchers, and like,
hmm,
and then we just started creating this thing about the dog. It's like, what happens if the dog just follows,
yes,
the wagon, And then we were actually on set. We were kind of laughing about it. We never expected people actually like
yeah,
see it, and it was like, yeah. And then the dog follows the cart,
yeah,
and then became just our thing on set. But apparently, the people just love the dog.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was really cute dog.
yeah, and so well trained, and yeah, everyone has definitely. Do you see these reactions happening in real time? Like, do you look at people's reactions to your own episodes like after they air?
I I read what I can. I don't know where to go to read, like, actually, like, live comments, but I just, like,
Yeah.
I check either IMDb comments or
Okay.
Instagram. I follow a few How's the Dragon accounts, and
Hmm.
I did see that the dog thing just became a thing. And
Yeah.
funny enough, it's one of those things, you're shooting it, and you have an idea. The director has an idea, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see all the big fans just, like, you know, pausing it and saying that is the dog, that's the same dog, and then you have the idea of the dog following, and then you just make a joke out of it,
Yeah.
and it is one of those things you pay. If it pays off, that's great. If it doesn't, we just had a blast on set. But
Mhm.
yeah, the dog was really cute.
Yeah, they even have memes of the dog, right? Like the true dragon rider, and it's the dog on the dragon. I thought that was pretty funny. Well, yeah. But yeah, shooting at King's Landing, that was so interesting because in the first season, it's really before all this is going down. It's like really more of a coming of age story, I guess, if you can consider bringing your niece to a brothel coming of age. Um, but King's Landing, just like again, there was like the nice orbs. Damon walks into the throne room, and you have Viserys on one side, him on the other side, and you see this big wide shot of everyone, and the camera follows Damon and focuses on Rhaenyra as he's walking through. I thought that was just like a really cool moment, and then like the crown is brought out, and there's like this big orb around the crown. It was just a very like I just like noticing all these details. I just thought like it was just so well done.
It's such a nice set. It's so symbolic and nice set, and like everything, it's very iconic.
Hmm.
For season 2, we had to shoot it first. That was the first set we all shot. Like, all directors, all DPs came, and for 2 weeks we shot everything on the throne room for the entire season, because they were gonna tear it apart, and it had to do with actors availability. Like, we really needed that studio to keep building things. So yeah, that was like the first thing everybody shot, like the throne. But the throne is just such a pleasure to shoot. Like those really wide. It's huge. It's very tall. So
Hmm.
you want to get that scope, and you want to do those long dollies with wide lenses. And on my scenes there was some like lightning and thunder. Um, you really make a lot of that set. Like it's such a beautiful um architecture, I think. Um, so
Hmm.
yeah, everybody got, and then there were like three new DPs, new DPs for the show. So they went in there, and then they went just crazy. Like, oh my God, you want to stay there all day just shooting wide shots.
Yeah, there's so many. I think so many details to focus on when filming something like this. I suppose because you have just the details of like the embroidery, the sigils, the colors are they always like pop out. I guess I would say. Um, and then you have so much lighting. You have like the lighting from the windows, lighting from the candles. Is it? Yeah, I guess I would maybe not tough, but I guess how do you just juggle how to film all those details and get the lighting just right? There's also outdoor scenes, so.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the job of a lot of people. Our department is, I would think, is the biggest department of the show. Um, Wardrobe, set deck, props, all that. In a show like that you want to get everything right. So every single detail, like you said, like the embroidery of things that you wouldn't even see or ever will see, but they're there. There's handwritten letters on,
Yeah.
that actually say something about this, the realm, and the desk that's in the far background, and you can actually go there and read those letters and see
Crazy.
like all those wax seals, and you can see everything. Same thing with wardrobe, like you can go and see every single detail. So I think that's one of the things that makes this kind of show so special. It's like this really elaborate and detailed way of approaching everything that's on screen. That of course takes a lot of time. And there's the lighting is kind of the same. You you try to do as the best you can, and
Hmm.
there's no limitations in terms of, you do have limitations in terms of time, but you can make a lot of decisions, really early on to just create the right environment so you have access to pretty much everything you can have. So those lighting setups are big,
Hmm.
and then you have to put a lot of work on. Yeah, time on set is not a lot. It's like any other show, but it's the time that you have to prep. That
Hmm.
is the real luxury of a show like this. So having to prep a rig and envision the lighting of a set, that's a real luxury here.
Yeah, yeah, and especially in that fourth episode when they're walking through King's Landing, it's just a different vibe from where it went in season two. Because obviously you have the funeral. So on one end of the spectrum, you have like this fun night scene. It's like a carnival and festival, and then well, the brothel, obviously, and then you have this funeral with I believe they created like a silicone version of Jaharis, put on like the actual
Mm.
cart. But either way, it's right after the scene, the blood and cheese episode. It's just a totally different vibe, I guess. Is there a different mindset when filming that, or is it like sort of the same? Like we need to get this lighting right, or you really like kind of different mindset? Like
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
just depending on what's going on.
yeah. I mean, the first thing you do when you're planning a scene is what the scene is about and how you approach it, and what the feeling of the scene should be. And this is obviously a funeral of a kid,
Yeah.
who you just saw brutally murdered like minutes ago, if you're binge watching it. But
Right.
you really need to get on that, and then you need to really get on that other head. So what a scene was always about. What are the queen, what is she feeling? What's in her head? She's like being exposed, being so vulnerable, and
Hmm.
that's what you put in the back of your head, and then you start creating, concepts. How we watch a lot of funeral processions from a lot of things. We were very inspired by what happened during Lady Diana's funeral, and how
Yeah.
her kids had to walk
Right.
behind, and that was just so sad. And
Hmm.
so we were kind of, we were thinking about those moments, and it was just like it was about them. It was not about the people. It was not about. It was just how they were going through this moment. And then once you get that concept, then you start putting shots into it, and but
Hmm.
always having this gloomy, really sad feeling into everything. And then you start adding that's like the wobbly head, the carriage getting stuck.
Yeah.
All those things just add to the tension of it, and I think in this case really worked.
Yeah, it did. I think the scene, the veils and the outfits and just the whole moment. I think it was like hard for the characters to believe this was happening, and then equally difficult for those, especially that didn't read the book. I mean, even though I read the book, it's just to see it happening. It's like, oh wow, they really just actually murdered this, kid, and now they
Mm.
have to like kind of be in this funeral procession with everyone looking at them, and I guess they're trying to be
Yeah.
gracious and saying, hey, I'm sorry this happened, but it's still like this literally just happened yesterday. How am I, just watching them process that moment, was certainly something.
Yeah, I don't think the book even mentions the funeral. I don't know. I think because in the
Maybe
book,
not.
I think they go and bury him in the dragon pit. And even in the script, the funeral
True.
was like a
Yeah.
half of a page scene.
Mm.
Um it was very, very short. We were the ones that said, no, this needs to be bigger. There needs to be more, there's a lot of things around that, and it just happened and we just saw it. And the grief of it, and so we started evolving it. And so yes, it became a big deal, and we shot it in 3 different cities. And
Yeah.
so that worked out. I think it was like a big improvement on the tension of the show, and especially in that episode at that time.
Hmm.
It was not about the violence. It was not about the war. It was about the aftermath and how would they feel and
Hmm.
where these feelings were going to evolve to. So yeah, I'm very happy we made that scene bigger.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Now that you mentioned that, that they just said they kind of just cut to like the end result, but not that. And I think that was a really good addition to the show. I guess how do you go about editing a scene like that that wasn't necessarily in, I guess, the story you're building off of, but like, hey, this is something that will fit. I guess
Mm.
you got to run that up the ladder to to the powers that be, or is it like, has it happened?
Well, I mean, you can't censor yourself when you're preparing those things, and then of course you need to get approvals and you need to get people to like it. But a lot of things, and a lot of things stay on the page, right? And a lot of
Hmm.
things don't fit, or they just don't become the right tone. But you go for it and you start thinking what happens, and then you present and say, what would happen if this procession was bigger, or you know like the battle between the twins that was also supposed to not be
Yes.
shorter, but
Yeah.
there was a very specific way we wanted to shoot it. So you present those ideas, and in a show like this, specifically in this one, there's a lot of yeses to that.
Hmm.
They expect you to contribute, and they expect you, as long as you're not changing the book or the story.
Right.
Um, yeah, so they're very supportive, and that's a really cool way to work.
That is very cool. And yeah, the scene with Arik and Eric, just the whole lead up to that. I love how like kind of when you're watching the show, you just kind of like watch and observe. But like the more you go back, you can see like when Kristen Cole is confronting Arik, like where were you? Like the camera really gets up close and personal in that conversation. Like it's no like the wide angle shots are cool and all, but then it really like zooms in and you get the, kind of confrontation up close and personal, and you can see those reactions. And I just think that's very cool. Like again, when you're watching, like it's not something like you're just like observing, but upon set like watching it over, you're like, oh, like that's actually no wonder why like I'm like kind of attaching myself to that conversation so much, because you're like right in.
Mm-hmm. And like that's how Claire and I approach every scene. What is the scene about? What is it? What we want to learn from the scene? What were the actors, the characters projecting? And then at the end, it's we're shooting a drama. So I mean, dragons in the background or not, it's about this is about a family that's tearing itself apart. And sometimes it's just about getting that. It's just about getting the emotion. So we always tend, especially her and I, you always tend to be with them. We find the interesting part of it being the actors and the characters. So we, I don't know, we did the right thing, but we end up being close.
Yeah, no, I think it works great. And it's funny you mentioned like a family drama because the other Kingsguard, they get up like a fight's break, a political fight's breaking out over a family dinner. It's time to get up and excuse
Yeah, yeah,
ourselves
yeah.
from the table.
Very dysfunctional family.
Very, very. But yeah, the fight scene itself was phenomenal. It was mentioned that it was rehearsed between the two actors about 30 times, I think they said. They rehearsed it till they like got it right.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time like that was the first. I think when we first got to England for season two, that was I think it was February.
Hmm.
The first thing we talked about with Stuns was like, okay, what are we gonna do about the twins?
Hmm.
And so the whole concept started growing. I don't think we even shot that scene until like July or August.
Oh wow.
Um, but it was all that time as well creating it. It was about rehearsing it, thinking about it, doing rehearsals, shooting videos. I mean, the twins are just amazing, and there was just this very powerful, uh, thing about this particular moment in the book.
Hmm.
When I read it years ago, I remember because I have a twin daughters, and I
Oh
remember
really? Okay.
how hard that was, and how
Hmm.
hard must have been for them uh to go that way. So yeah, it was a very powerful scene. We knew it from the beginning, and we had to make the most of it.
Yeah, because I mean, in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, you have a lot of brothers fighting all the time. Although I'm not entirely sure we ever saw twins fighting. From what I recall, there hasn't been like a twin fight. So this is like the first.
No,
I
no,
believe
this is
this
a
is the
very
first one.
particular one. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the story, this is a very particular one. I mean, in Thrones, no, I mean the Cersei and Jamie are not identical twins, but
Right.
but yeah, like twins fighting. Yeah, this is a very and it in the book, it has a big moment.
Yeah, like even in Game of Thrones, like that's like a story within the story because that's a story that is quoted multiple times in Game of Thrones itself. Like it's a fight that 170 years later people are still talking about. So even in the lore of the make believe world of Game of Thrones, it is a big story within that world. So um,
Yeah,
I think you did the fight justice, like just the different filming styles. You had kind of the shaky cam, and again, you were very up close and personal. It wasn't this like this wide action, wide angle shot where you just kind of see two people fighting. You're really in there. You're feeling those sword swings
yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
they're hitting.
I guess that the whole idea of that fight was let's get to a point where nobody knows who's who.
Yes.
Um, you know, and that was the whole, that was the whole meaning of it. It's this two guys were one, um,
Hmm.
fighting each other and killing each other. So that was the whole point of the fight, like not knowing, not everybody at the end, not even her, you know.
Right.
So that would by doing that we would get to that feeling of not taking sides and just like seeing
Hmm.
the horrible truth about it. So
Right.
yeah, very happy about it.
Yeah, the brutalities of war in full effect. Yeah, and it's so interesting how like Rhaenyra is in the background, just like frightened while this like chaotic, one of the most chaotic. Because she's not. She even says in the show, I'm not a warrior. I wasn't trained in battle. Just seeing this brutality up close and personal, it's like a civil war within a civil war. Now, it's a very interesting moment. I think for her as a character too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um. Anyway, yeah, yeah. Again, there's some. I really love the shot of the Erie. I think that's the first time we saw it in House of the Dragon. Like it kind of opens up with this kind of stone and concrete gate and pans up to the mountains, and you see the Erie in the background. And I love how the camera sort of pulls in from the window, and it's almost like a
Mm,
prison for the character rather than it is like a safe
mm.
haven. Um, I guess yeah, the whole shot in general, I just thought it was I guess you can maybe briefly walk through how you did that? Because I imagine there was
Yeah,
CGI and
I mean,
real world effects.
yeah. It was mostly CGI. We did show some plates, but it was most about the concept. Like we
Mm-hmm.
knew the ones who follow Thrones, we knew the concept of what the ear was, and it's this impenetrable place unless you're going from the air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very
Right.
famous part of the realm that yeah, nobody can attack it except you're going with dragons. So that
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole concept behind that. So we shot this plates where we would comp the castle, in the back, but that reminded us of that Eerie we saw on Thrones, and that was like the
Mm-hmm.
way to introduce it. And then yes, it is exactly becomes some kind of a prison,
Mm-hmm.
um, where at this point Reina is, and that was the whole introduction. The Eerie will play more eventually, but it was
Mm-hmm.
it was more about reminding people where this was, what it was about, the relationship to the Starks, and everything that would tell us a little bit of the story. And it's got a Kickstarter, a very interesting story about a dragon. Yeah,
Yes, we saw bits. We saw literally bits and pieces of a sheep when that
yeah,
in the last episode.
yeah. Which if you read the book, you know exactly what dragon I'm talking about.
hmm Yeah, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but yeah, it's a very yeah, it's a exciting scene that will open up a lot. I suppose the way there was a particular scene where Otto was hatching the plan, just going back to the funeral in King's Landing for a moment, where he's talking, and then it's kind of done, I think, a few times throughout the episode where he's talking, the camera's focused on him, you see the character in the background, in this case, it was Tywin Lannister, and it's blurry, but then he starts talking, and instead of like a switch of the POV, you kind of refocus the camera to the character in the background. And that actually happened a few times with Rhaenyra and Damon. It was um, I'm not sure if I'm describing the technique the right way, but I'd noticed that a few times that instead of like a quick cut to someone talking, it was more of like just a refocus of the lens and to kind of keep the,
Mm.
I guess, singularity of the shot going, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I mean, a lot of things you decide on, and you put some rules, and you create a language with the camera. Some other times, what you're just feeling on set, right? Like
hmm
shooting those scenes with as those actors. There's especially when you're talking about acting scenes. There's not a lot you can plan. You go in there, and then the actors will have a big saying of what they want to do and how they want to do it. You can't rehearse every single scene, so you go into a few scenes that are just, let's just shoot this guy's acting, and a lot of those decisions come from being there and saying, okay, let's just not cut the camera, let's just evolve the shot, let's
hmm
change the focus, and then just let move the camera to include the other character. And I guess that kind of becomes the style once you
Okay.
get used to shoot with somebody like Matt or Emma, who just they like to no, they don't improvise, but they do like to feel the scene and do what they think their characters would do. And
hmm
sometimes they changes even within the day. Um, so you just have to go to the flow. If you storyboard, you're playing the shots, and you really try to stick to them, you will fail. You need to adapt to what the actors are bringing in on the day, and that just by doing that every day, you're creating a language
Yeah.
because they'll keep doing it.
Yeah, like even their facial expressions when they're I love the painted table at Dragonstone, but after the blood and cheese incident, they're all talking and they're like, "Who could have done this?" And then like that sort of became another meme in itself. But you have Renero, it's just like the eye language. They weren't even saying anything, but just the way I think it was filmed, and of course their acting just kind of they made it work so well.
Yeah. So also the set, like I said, like the painted table, it's so there and it's just so solid. People are around the table. Same thing with the small council. You have to find different ways to shoot it just to make it boring. But on the other
hmm
hand, there's not a lot you can do about shooting people on the table, right? So
Right.
you gotta play with those angles, you can keep some attention. But especially in those kind of scenes, you favor the acting before anything, right? It's like what is being said and why. um, you can always find good angles, and you can always find a new way to light it. But at the end, it's about what's being said,
hmm
and I think that's important in scenes like that.
Yeah, and Claire even mentioned in one of the behind the scenes episodes, powerful scene in the opening. One of the opening scenes is, I think it might even be the opening scene, Corliss kind of walking by himself through Driftmark and sitting on the throne. And Claire mentioned she didn't expect him to actually like shed a tear, but nevertheless,
Yeah,
you had a close up of it and this tear. So that was something to
yeah,
pick up on.
yeah. We went to open episode 5 with the concept of grief, and that, whatever that means in everything is like either staring to something or yes, crying, or but it was about this grief after the fact. Shooting with Steve is amazing. He's a great guy. He's an amazing actor, and we um we didn't have the set and on the second season, so a lot of that was blue screen.
Yeah.
But we had been on that set. He had been on that set
Hmm.
before, so we could all imagine what it was, and I think he did a great job, like putting that emotion on a very small, quick scene to shoot,
Hmm.
but that had all this power, behind.
Yeah, I think kind of like the stares and looks can say a thousand, like they say, a picture can speak a thousand words, but kind of looks and
Mm,
stares can as well. Even when they're bringing Maelys and Aegon in his box back to King's Landing, you have the shot of like Alicent looking at Aemon, and Aemon's just kind of like callously looking at the procession, not really showing much emotion at all. And then she's just kind of like looking at him like up and down, and then she sees a dagger, and she's like, "You you didn't, did
yeah.
you?"
I think that scene has some dialogue in it, and I think it just didn't need it. Well, when I saw it edited, I was like, "Oh, wasn't there some of the lines?" But then you realize that you don't need lines for something like that. And then, yeah, just by looking up at him, looking back down at the dagger,
Yeah,
him not even minding,
right.
then you're telling the story that way. So, yeah, like I said, a lot of times it's about the emotions, about the characters. It's when we have amazing actors.
Yeah, truly. I particularly like the shot where they're bringing him through King's Landing, and you put the camera on the box or coffin, whatever you want to call it, and you kind of get this POV on the box as it's going through the
Mhm.
Red Keep. I thought that was very interesting because you don't really know what's in the box yet. Like what's in the box, you don't really know yet.
Well, that was the whole point of the scene, to not knowing what was going on. Is it they're bringing a corpse? People don't know about it, and then
Yeah.
that voyage between the doors of the Red Keep all the way up to his room. It was like, what is in there? Like you'd start to figuring out that raking shot of the box, or the coffin.
Hmm.
That was something we thought about. It's like what are we, because that we did made that shot following all it through the castle. Of course, it got cut at the end. It was not as long, but there was a theory where we were gonna follow that that box from that perspective all over, and that was just about who's in there. And then there was
Right.
some inserts that we shot, the hand moving, or they just like something that was there.
Hmm.
But then at the end, editing decisions are what they are, and they just
Right.
like they try to make a lot of times things that you envision on set don't really work on the edit.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
that's how it is.
Yeah, well, I think it came out great either way. I guess the editors are gonna, make the art, make the decision, but I think you give them what obviously you give them the canvas to work with, and they kind of, I guess, paint it all together in a way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, just and also like I guess it wouldn't be House of the Dragons without some like gore in it. And you see like them pulling off this Valerian armor, and there's I think this close up of the blood spurting out. It's just like the most gruesome like injury you could possibly like imagine, which it should be because you got burned by a
Yeah,
dragon and fell like 200 feet to the ground.
yeah, and that's what the story's about. I mean, I never thought it was about foreign foreign lands and unknown places, dragons or whatever. I think it's about universal values, and about people, and about people's uh, you know uh, existence and overall. And I think that's what the show is really about, and that's why it's so popular, because it's about humans. It's about people who might have the same problems as you do. And then, of course,
Mhm.
you do have the action, and you have the wars, and you have the gore, and the blood and everything
Mm,
that goes around it. Um, but the empathy and how close you can get to these people is what really makes it work.
definitely. I think we get a full glimpse of that with Damon and Harrenhal with his traumatic experiences in his dreams. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Well, there's all this theory about what's going on there. I mean, answer
Mhm,
is simple and not. This is a very old place where very different things have happened. There are
mhm.
more powerful forces than just people, and older things that have happened there. So yeah, he's going a little bit crazy. That the castle gets to you.
Right.
And then there's other elements that are not playing, in its
Mhm,
favor. But there's definitely something going on.
right.
Um, that theory is that it should stop once he's out of there.
Well, hope so. Hopefully. Well, yeah, this has been very fun. I appreciate all your insights. Will you be back? I don't know if you can comment on anything else this season or next season, but if you can, will you be back for more episodes? You and Claire for more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were told that we were invited. That of course this is a long process, so I don't know what part of that would be. Like I said, I like being the one that has shot the most, so I probably want to keep that.
Yeah,
And if that happens, to probably next year. So yeah, we'll keep you posted.
definitely. Well, I've enjoyed watching the House of the Dragon, and it's
Thank
been
you.
an awesome prequel series. I think everyone needed it. And yeah, you've done an amazing job, you and Claire, and all the actors,
Thank
of
you.
course. So thank you for your work, and I appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time and being a fellow fan of the show. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.